And with that, we are back live with the Astro Weather for today, the 24th of January. And the terrestrial weather out here is pretty dark and wet. Finally, for a change, here in Texas, where they're doing their best to create epic Dust Bowl-like conditions over the last year or so, we get a little bit of relief from the rain. So we'll see how long that goes. I hope everybody's having a good day so far in your morning, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you are enjoying your day and learning from it and growing from it. And both time and life are your allies. So we're going to talk a little about time later in the show today. But right now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about where we are astrologically. We're just coming off the new Aquarian moon, and we did a show on Sunday night here on this channel, which detailed the Aquarian spirit with some very interesting historical characters in the Aquarian canon. And of course, since we do the star of the day here, we're going to look at another one. So, but that's going to be at the end of the show. Let's see where we are today. It is, of course, the 24th. And the moon is now in kind of moving into the first quarter phase, right? So now the moon is in 12 Pisces, still kind of in the new moon category. By the time it goes to the end of the Pisces decan and ingress and into Aries, we're definitely into the first quarter moon. So if you could look up into the night sky, you would begin to see the moon appear like that little Shiva sliver of a moon. And the Pisces moon, very different than the Aquarian moon. Obviously, the Aquarian moon, a little more detached, a little more eccentric, a little more reflective about the oddities of the world in existence, whereas the Pisces moon is definitely more emotional. And we're looking really at the moon and its transit through the sign and catching up with Neptune tomorrow. That's going to be a really, really interesting time, just in terms of emotions, because with Pisces runs the gamut, right? Pisces can go from elation and ecstasy and just, being madly in love with the spirit of God and the divine. It can also descend into much darker places. So you can really run the gamut when it comes to Pisces. And but I think by and large, the transit of the moon, especially into Neptune, can be very cleansing, right? So we're talking tonight and tomorrow. Of course, I'll reiterate some of this tomorrow. And it has a lot to do with the sextile with Pluto. And Pluto, of course, being connected to death and transformation. So this is one of those transits where if you have experienced loss in your life over the not so distant past, you can really begin to experience some deep catharsis and, dare I say the word healing when we move, because the moon is fresh, right? It's not like it's kind of hanging out in these other phases, especially, after it waxes. Now we're kind of looking at adjustments and deconstruction. There's a definite dive into the potential of what the moon represents. So we're talking about emotional potential. And I often feel like the thing that could theoretically save us in this realm is to come to some extremely deep catharsis around, what's happened to our lives, what's happened to our cultures, what's happened to many things that we've had to either willingly or unwillingly sacrifice along the way. Now, to get to that, sometimes we have to get through anger, because the psychological formula for reaching grief is to go through rage. That brings Mars in here, right? So today we have a Mars moon square going on. So if you're going to tap into some fiery emotions, today is the day. And if you wind up going to that place, right? If you, and I'm not trying to program your day so you go to that place, just let's be clear about that. But if you do go to that place, then you got to go all the way, right? You have to go all the way so that you can get to the other side of whatever the rage is. Because remember, this is a fairly fresh moon. It is pretty innocent in some ways. At least that's how Pisces would operate, right? That's how Pisces would. It's you know, at that phase, at this phase of the moon, it's innocent. So the Mars square to the moon would be almost like rupturing the state of innocence, right? It would be like puncturing it. So we do see the moon separating early in the day today. But nonetheless, this is the energy that starts the day off. So if you're going to go to that place, if you're going to go into frustration, if you're going to go and have to deal with these emotions that are boiling beneath the surface, just go all the way, right? Go all the way, because by the time the moon moves into conjunction with Neptune later tonight and tomorrow, it begins to sextile Pluto, and the catharsis could begin to happen. The catharsis can begin to occur. Mercury is moving into a tighter square with Chiron over the next couple of days. And again, it kind of mirrors some of the friction and tension that we're seeing with Mars. Aries, of course, being the ruler of Mars. So the Mercury-Chiron square can be putting your foot in your mouth, right? I mean, that it's like, oops, I said that. I hurt that person's feelings. Well, I don't think it's the end of the world. Oh, look who's here. It's about time. Come on. Earn your cat food. Let's go. Come on. People have been asking about you. Come on. Let's go. Of course, he's going to come up here in his own time. Look, this is a short show. This is not Sunday night. Okay. Come on. There we go. The Astro Cat is with us. There he is. Say hi. Want to say hi to everybody? So we got a bit of a theme here, right? A bit of a theme. Hurt feelings, misplaced words, dealing with saying things that people aren't prepared to hear. That's the other part of it too. You know, we have a social contract with how we interact with people. And I have had to learn this the hard way. You never, ever, ever give feedback to somebody unless they're ready, willing, and able to hear that. How do you know? You ask them. Would you like to know how I feel about that? Would you like to know how I think, what I think about that? If they say yes, boom, you've got the contract. And then you can, yeah, you know that. And then you have a pathway. And that does two things. Number one, you have a contract and agreement and consent with the other person. The other thing is that when we do that, we think a bit more carefully about the things we're going to say, right? Instead of just going half cocked and, well, this is what I think, and this is what I think, and this is what I think. Yeah, but is that what you think? Yeah. When you do that, you're more conscious and aware and thoughtful of the things that you're actually saying. So this is one of those days where even with a Mercury square to Chiron, you may, if you practice that, it could lessen the sting a little bit, right? But all things are not lost. They are not lost, because today, very quickly in the early morning hours here in North America, we do have a very nice moon sextile to Mercury. So following one's hunches, following one's instincts can be rewarded. And that'll play out a little bit as the day progresses. And as Mercury begins to move closer and closer into this alignment with Neptune over the next few weeks, communication will get much more soulful and deeper, and the potential for healing, real healing, during that time, I think is quite good, especially as we have Mercury begin to approach Pluto. Like, those are the conversations and the words that can change people's lives. We're not quite there yet. We do have Mars kind of moving away from the sun, but we're still dealing with the trine. And that was kind of the giddy up energy over the weekend with that new moon in Aquarius. And the sun will ultimately catch up to Mars because Mars moves a little bit slower than the sun. So we're actually going to see a Mars, Sun Mars trine over the next couple of days. And even if you've been down in the dumps for a couple of weeks or maybe months, and who knows, maybe years, right? It's one of those transits where when the sun catches up with Mars, there's more initiatory energy in the world, right? And more initiatory energy in your life. So anything else here? Venus is starting to separate from Saturn a little bit, but they're still in that really tight conjunction, which means you're in it together forever. Kind of. I mean, that's how Venus and Saturn operate. A time of very deep bonding. It's not always sexy, right? Saturn-Venus conjunctions aren't always sexy, but it's like friends, you're friends. It's, this is more than friends, but that's the baseline with a Venus-Saturn conjunction, especially in Aquarius. So it's a good time for collaboration. It's a very good time. And in Aquarius, it's not just between two people. It can be between a team and a group. So if you're somebody that does, manage groups or lead groups, this is a good time. You can really get a lot out of your groups if you are clear about what the objectives are. And I think that's really important. No, don't do that. Now he wants to scratch the couch. That's a big no. And why don't you just come up here? Don't scratch the couch, though. You're too old for that kitty shit. You know that? You're too old for that kitty shit. All right, there's your Astro Weather for today. Let's talk about the star of the day. And our star of the day is a very interesting star of the day. I think one of the more, would I use the word compelling? There's a lot of compelling people. But our star of the day today is a culture changer. And today's star of the day, in a big way, is Jose Arguelles. So Arguelles, of course, is the father of the Mayan dream spell, which is a variant of the Mayan long count calendar. And Arguelles is such an interesting character in this regard. So he understands the Mayan calendar implicitly, right? But what he does is he places his day sign as the first day of the dream spell, because he believes that he is Pakal Votan, the Lord of Time. And so his day is the one that's the most important. I mean, when you get into the Mayan calendar and the long count versus the dream spell, there can be a lot of controversy. But my first introduction to the Mayan calendar was through Jose Arguelles. And there were a number of people who did a lot of work with the Mayan calendar, but none of them had the same kind of cultural impact that Arguelles did. And even prior to his time with the Mayan calendar or the dream spell, Arguelles created or noted the harmonic convergence. So he's the guy that's really pivotal with starting the harmonic convergence, or at least noting it. And then people all over the world, I believe it was 1986, if I'm not mistaken, when there was this alignment of planets that was very unique and specific. And so this idea was to bring the world closer together. People were aware of this moment in time, and it was a global event. It was definitely a global event. So what makes Jose Arguelles' chart interesting? Well, there's a couple things. When you get into time, Capricorn, in my estimation, rules time, right? Saturn is the clock of the zodiac. And based on Saturn cycles, Saturn subcycles, and Saturn aspects, we can see where we are in our lives through the progression of Saturn and Saturn through time. So one of the things that's really interesting is that Arguelles has Mercury in Capricorn And he also has Juno in Capricorn conjunct Mercury, right? So look at what he says here. Who owns your time owns your mind. Change your time and you change your mind. Change your mind and you change your world. So what Arguelles does with this grand trine, Neptune, Mercury, and Uranus, look at that grand trine. He is a timekeeper, and he's a timekeeper for a new time, right? Because that's what Juno represents. It represents the new thing. So he is bringing this idea of a new time or new cycles of time, even reinventing the Mayan calendar, which many people were aghast, right? All these Mayan scholars, were like aghast that he would do this thing. But when we look at his chart, it's almost inevitable. He has Uranus in the 10th house. So he's going to be a radical culture changer. Now, he's not radical in the same way as, let's say, Bill Ayers is radical, but he's radical in a different sense. And even with Ceres here, right, he's nurturing a breakthrough or a new thing. And what's also really interesting is the South Node in conjunction with Uranus. And when you deal with planets around the South Node, you're looking at what this person has brought into this lifetime. And really, he's bringing this radical shift or this radical repurposing of elements. And Taurus, even though it is not connected to time in the same way as Capricorn is, Taurus does represent the earth, and the earth is denoted by the 4 seasonal changes, which are connected to the 4 cardinal signs, the 2 cardinal signs and the 2 mutable signs, right? So we're dealing, I apologize. The 4 cardinal signs, I just had the dates in my head a little screwed up there. The 4 cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, and that's where time changes, right? This is where we experience time change. And we do that here on this planet. The other thing that's interesting about Arguelles is Saturn in the 9th house. And Saturn in the 9th house is really the aspect of the teacher, right? Somebody who has something to share, somebody who has something to say, somebody who's put a lot of time and effort into whatever field of study that they've invested in, right? So we see this with Arguelles, and we also see the squares here, right? The square with Mercury is that he's going to piss off people regarding his new dimension of time or the reinterpretation of the Mayan calendar. Arguelles did make enemies. He was not always well liked, even though his demeanor was very gentle and very calm and quite eccentric in some ways. I used to see him at the Whole Life Expo in San Francisco whenever I would show up there. He was always there. He never had a booth or anything. He would just float around with Lloyd Dean, who was his partner, looking very eccentric, as one would expect an Aquarian to be able to do. He was incredibly hardworking as well. I mean, the guy wrote a lot of books. And we can see that with the sun here in the 6th house, conjunct Black Moon Lilith, which is really more collective, right? When you get into Aquarius, you get into the collective projection of Black Moon Lilith on the sun. And then the opposition with Pluto. And I've noted this before, many really successful or well-known people seem to have Pluto in their 12th house. And so with Arguelles, we see another grand trine come into play. Pluto really at the end, beginning of Cancer, Leo, Moon in Pisces, coming down into Mars in Scorpio. So it's not quite a perfect fit, but Arguelles has a Magan star in his chart. And people would, say that, well, that's the Star of David. It's actually the Magan star or the Magi star. And Arguelles is a bit of a wizard by everything he's done. I would say the best description of Arguelles is he's a wizard. Now, what's also interesting about him is I was floating around the internet, and I happened to find another Jose Arguelles, and it's kind of odd. And if you look at this Jose Arguelles and the Jose Arguelles that I just talked about, they actually look quite similar in a lot of ways. In this Jose Arguelles, his nickname was El Divino, or the Divine. And he was a teacher and a minister and a diplomat that bounced back and forth between Spain and England and ultimately Argentina. And I just thought that was really, I'd never heard of this Jose Arguelles before. And again, when you kind of look at them facially, they're kind of similar looking. It's very, very interesting. I find that shit interesting, by the way. And even the name El Divino, right? The divine. And I think that the Jose Arguelles that we know of would actually really like that nickname. And I wanted to show you another photo of, and this is a photo of Saturn in the 9th house, right? There he is. He's teaching about the law of time and getting into, how these different planes of existence work and how they line up with the cycles inside the Mayan calendar. So Arguelles, very interesting character, and he's our star of the day. So there are a couple things that I want to take care of before we sign off for today. I'm wishing everybody a great day. I do have a show that I do on my webpage or my website, which is 15 Minutes of Flame. So let me bring up the graphic so you can see what I'm talking about here. And I do this starting 9/11, Tuesday through Thursday, right there. And we go to 10:41 a.m. That's 15minutesoflame.com. Some of you have jumped over and watched and participated. We have a great chat over there. A lot of people that you'll see in this chat migrate over to the chat over on 15 Minutes of Flame. And today's show is Where is Damar? We'll be talking about Damar Hamlin and that strange event that happened this weekend. So be sure to join us if you're interested. And lastly, I do have a sponsor for my shows, and I wanted to introduce my sponsor to this show, which I have not really done, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing it at the end of this show. So one of the things that I do every day is I drink a good, strong cup of power coffee, and one of the things that I add to my power coffee is something called moon dust. And moon dust is a powder that is a CBGA product from True Hemp Science. And True Hemp Science is the sponsor of my show. And if you're interested in some of the finest hemp products, CBD products that you can get, as far as I'm concerned, and I've sampled quite a few. And the great thing about True Hemp Science is that Christopher Lynch is a friend of mine. He has a shop in Austin, so I've known Christopher for quite a long time, and he has been really working hard and perfecting his relationship with CBD and hemp over the last, I think I started to connect with him around the CBD stuff around maybe 2017, 2016. So going on 7 years, which is a good Saturn cycle, and he's really starting to hit his stride. So if you're interested in organic hemp products, both products that you can take internally and topical products like salves, if you have some aches and pains in your body, I highly recommend that you check out True Hemp Science. And if you spend $100 or more at True Hemp Science, and there's a link right there, I'll put it in the description for the show notes, truehempscience.com/ref/23. You spend $100 or more, and Chris will send you some free product. Just add 15 mins, 15 MINS, into the description or into the box, the checkout box, And I start my day with the moon dust, and I end my day with the gummies, the CBD gummies, which are fantastic for sleep. So there's a whole line of products in there that you can explore. If you have any questions about them, you can send Christopher an email. You can call him. He's happy to spend time and talk with you. If he's not there, his able assistant, Marcia, can do the same. All right, that's it. That's the Astro Weather for today. Come join us on 15 Minutes of Flame, and we're going to find out where is the Mar, or at least do our best to try. Take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart's open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. We'll see you tomorrow.